I have an 11-year-old little boy named Seth who has Down syndrome. And he now prefers dad to wipe his bottom as opposed to mom. And mom celebrates that shift as Seth, nears puberty. And I don't remember who it was. I mean, it could have been John Mark for all I know. But they just said, listen, you're never closer to Jesus than when you're wiping his butt. And they didn't use the word butt, so it was even better, and I was like, oh. And so literally that phrase rings out every single time, and it's like, and I know this sounds, I don't even know how it sounds, buddy, but this is a thing forced on me that I would not choose. But it has been, I guess it's just been so freaking life-giving. I'm shocked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And yet, I don't know. It's become symbolic for me of such greater
so
God is doing.
You're talking about taking ordinary life experiences and recognizing that in something like wiping your son's bottom,
yep,
there is a formation into Christ likeness that's being developed. Right?
And the more, bro, well said. And the more I resist it, the more I need it.
So wait, you mean like you can be formed into Christ likeness doing something like that and not opening up the Bible and just reading and memorizing and praying into the late hours? This is a huge statement, because I think a lot of people don't realize this. And we talk, we preach, and this is what's so great about this opportunity right now. We talk about, I have always said, like, man, where it matters is wherever you are, right? So your home, your neighborhood, your workplace, like God wants to fill you with his presence, the Spirit of God, to give you power to live as a witness every day, everywhere, to everyone you meet.
Yeah.
But we still take that and we say, okay, there's some sacred spaces in the world, and then there's secular spaces. And like, I want to give God my spiritual life. And what you're saying, though, is all of it's sacred. There is no divide. And in this moment where we can't go to a church facility. We don't even have a church facility, but you can't go to a place. You are forced into your ordinariness.
Yep.
And God wants to meet you there and form you into Christ likeness, even here. So for me, I was having this conversation with Pastor Bill, my mentor, Bill Doctrum. I was just saying, like, the gift that this time has been for me is God showing me how angry and impatient I am.
Yeah.
And the gift of COVID is the revelation of my temper, where it's coming out all the time.
Yes.
And in the last 10 days, it hasn't been, because I became aware of God saying, basically, the gift of your children in this time is for you to work on this issue. So you wanted to work on your patience and become more like me. Great. I'm going to give you 2 kids that you can't control
for 5 weeks. Yes.
Right. So,
but that's exactly it. And it's not that God, like, we just so misunderstand his purposes in that, because I was reading in Hebrews, about God's discipline. And that's always been such a scary concept for me, because I've always had this false self that needed to be propped up, and I was terrified of it being exposed. And so his discipline, he's talking about, obviously discipline is so different from punishment. Discipline has to do with flourishing and blessing. But there was a harvest. He uses this great phrase, right? That, there's harvest of righteousness and peace for those who've been trained by it. And I think I have just begun to learn the formative power of those things. Like the fact that if you would ask how my wife feels like I've treated her today, is far more telling of my spiritual condition than how much of the Bible I read. You know what I mean?
Come on. Yeah, I do know.
And the Bible I've read is, if not backed up in my relationship there, is, it actually does me more harm than good. And ladies and gentlemen, here, Seth, you could say hi for 1 second.
On,
this
Seth.
is my friend. This is my friend Darren.
Hi.
Hi, Seth.
Hey, doing?
Hi, Darren.
Great. How are you?
Hey, doing?
How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah? Can I have
Come
kisses?
on.
Oh.
Kisses.
Oh, he gave you kisses,
Thank you,
Darren.
Seth.
He gave you, says thank you, Seth.
I remember when you announced that you were pregnant with Seth
Right?
on stage. I remember when he was born. That's so crazy. I remember when he was a little nugget.
Oh, he was a little nugget.
11-year-old.
Not anymore, man. He
Come on.
is. Oh, it's the greatest thing. But again, so there's something
There you go.
that I would never have chosen that has turned out to be, because we've submitted ourselves to it, has turned out to be the greatest piece of blessing. Right? Now, everyone's going to say that and say, yeah, until it happens to us. But dadgummit, man, there is so much power in this. I don't know. I mean, for me, bro, being on a stage for the last 20 years and now being off of one, I just realized there was so much pretending, and it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart, even with God. Like I just don't know how to sit with him and be real with him. And then invariably I get thinking about that, and invariably my son will come, and he doesn't say his words perfectly, and he doesn't really do numbers yet, and has all of these deficiencies according to the, whatever the standards are. And yet, even when he's frustrating and irritating, right, I couldn't delight in him more. And there's the still small voice that's just like, dude, it's okay.
Yeah.
And I know it's cliche, man, but to believe that at that moment when you've been irritable, or that moment when, you've been selfish or whatever, that the Father isn't just shaking his fist, but, is gently correcting so that you might flourish beyond that. I don't know. That's just been so powerful for me.
That's huge.
I mean, here's the dumb thing, Darren. Like, I know all this stuff.
Yeah, I get it.
But I just didn't know it.
Hey, you're talking to a teacher. You're talking to somebody who will preach something.
Oh.
And then Monday comes and my wife's like, hey, could you just be the person that you were on stage?
Totally.
Like, but in all seriousness, like we have had these fights and these arguments this is why I feel like the sacrament of marriage, like the process of sanctification, my wife has never let me not be someone who is real and true. She has called me out, and I, she's an 8 in the Enneagram, and I've learned to love the 8. I'm a 3. And so there's personality, and we work together, and we do life together. She homeschools, and I think the gift has been the sanctification process of her regularly holding me up, holding a mirror and saying, no, like Jesus says, this is what's true. And I think there's something true about this idea that in the world in general, not just church leaders, but in general, it's easier to pretend to be someone you're not than to say you aren't who you say you are.